Morning, Mr. Moderator.
Good morning.
Good morning, Representative McGuire. We'll get started here in a little bit, a few minutes anyways. And Representative Gray is on as well. Excellent. Jerica, let's give it one more minute. We got people signing on and then kick it off.
I think we still have a couple more getting on here. Just a second. All right, we'll go ahead and get going. We want to first say thank you to everybody for attending our pre-legislative forum. Obviously, not being able to do this in person is a little bit harder, so we really do appreciate your patience and you're willing to ride through all of this with us. We'd like to give a big thank you to our presenting sponsor for this event, which is Black Hills Energy. And we'd also like to recognize our other sponsors for this event: Sinclair Refinery, Visit Casper, the Town of Mills, Advance Casper, and First State Bank. We're excited to also have on the call with us today legislators Jerry Obermuller, Representative Jerry Obermuller, Representative Joe McGuire, Representative Sweeney, and getting on the call here with us very shortly will be Speaker Harshman, as well as Representative Washit. Then, today is Veterans Day, so we'd be remiss if we didn't honor the meaning of today. You know, this morning, instead of watching the news like I normally do, I was flipping channels and A Few Good Men happened to be on. And there's a line in that movie that's kind of stuck with me over the years. So Weinberg asked Galloway, "Why do you like them so much?" And a response to him is, "Because they stand on a wall and they say, 'Nothing's going to hurt you tonight, not on my watch.'" That is our veterans. That's the legacy that they've left us, and they deserve all the gratitude that we have for them. They're our friends and our neighbors and our family. They're our coworkers. They encompass every industry within our community. So today, to our veterans, we say thank you, not just today, but every day. So with that, I would like to introduce to you, on behalf of our presenting sponsor, Jonathan Boudreau, who is the Gas Operations Manager for Black Hills Energy.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Awesome. Well, thank you for putting this together, and I really appreciate you giving me a few minutes to speak on behalf of Black Hills Energy. We at Black Hills Energy believe very strongly about supporting the communities which we serve, and enjoy being a valued partner with the Chamber of Commerce and the other community organizations. It's very important to us, so thanks again. Just a quick overview of Black Hills Energy in Casper. We have about 44 employees that serve roughly 28,000 residential customers and 3,100 commercial customers, with our main priority providing safe, reliable, affordable services for all of our customers. So this year, which I'm very, very proud of, despite the pandemic and what it has done to the several businesses in the area, We've actually accomplished quite a lot. We've invested in over $3 million into the infrastructure of Casper to boost the integrity of our system, to keep providing that reliable, safe, efficient fuel to the residents of our community. That includes over 2,100 meter exchanges, and as well as some various integrity projects, as included the ARMOR, which is our at-risk meter program. So in addition to the regular guidelines that everyone has pretty much come accustomed to with mask wearing and social distancing, we've implemented those measures into our daily work routine as well. So we've implemented some safety guidelines for all employees to follow. We all perform daily screenings before we get to work. We all wear masks when going in and out of customers' homes, and when riding together and when working together. So when you see our crews out working hard, doing what they do best, they're all following our guidelines to make sure we're all staying safe, and we're not only protecting ourselves, but protecting the community that we serve and all of our customers. So with that, I just want to say thanks again for letting me talk about Black Hills Energy, and I'll send it back over.
Thank you, Jonathan. I also need to mention that we also have Representative Gray on the call. So thank you, Representative, for joining us. Now I'd like to introduce you to the Chairman of the Chamber's Board of Directors and our moderator for today's event, Mr. Michael Howe.
Thank you, Jerica. And on behalf of the Casper Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I welcome you to this important discussion. And whether these events are in person or virtual, we truly value the time you've committed to attending and participating in these. The Chamber's primary purpose is to ensure the success of its members. And one of the ways we do that is through advocacy. So this event, it offers us an opportunity for the membership to hear firsthand from those that represent them at the state legislature. Just some quick ground rules. We're going to give each legislator 2 minutes to offer some opening remarks, and then we'll get to some specific questions, and they'll have about 2 minutes each to answer those questions. And if there's time remaining, anybody in the audience that wants to ask questions, you can put those in chat, and we'll try to get those addressed as well. I don't have a gavel, but I do have control of the mute button. So if you go excessively long, expect to be muted. Don't take that personally. I'm kind of a stickler for that. So without further ado, thank you all for attending. And let's start with some opening remarks. And I'm just going to go around the horn here. So Representative McGuire, you want to kick it off?
Thank you very much. I was hoping to go last so I could get an idea of what people were going to talk about, but I'll just talk about a couple things. Obviously, we're all on edge right now about what's going to happen with the state of Wyoming. And I think one of the most important things that we can do, especially the Chamber as a group, is continue to encourage or fight or do whatever it takes to keep dollars in Wyoming. And I don't want to pick on anybody or point any fingers, but we just sold the largest employer in Casper to an out-of-state company. And I'm sorry, but those dollars flow out of state. And it's no different than buying your goods from Amazon or whatever else. It's the people who stay here and invest in Wyoming. They're the ones that help build the community. And the example that I always give is you can walk up to Casper College and walk around those buildings and see the Goodstein building and see the Wold Energy building. And, I have yet to see Amazon.com on any of those building names. And that is the big difference. If we're going to have any kind of a chance at a recovery and building a strong economy again, we have got to keep Wyoming dollars circulating in Wyoming. We can't let them go out of state. And, there's going to be some questions about increasing revenue. Well, we have businesses that come into the state of Wyoming and they earn money in the state of Wyoming, and then they take off. And a good example is we have large contractors that come to Wyoming and they earn money here and they go home and they pay tax on the money that they earned here in Wyoming to their own state. So we're going to have to start taking a look at some of those things. The other thing, I don't know if it's time to talk about bills that I think are important, but one of the bills I'm going to introduce, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But in my opinion, it's just a common sense bill, and that is that anybody who has earned college credit from a Wyoming college, that the presumption will be that that college credit will not expire. And by that, I mean right now the custom is, and it's only a custom. I've asked all of the college administrators if it's a rule or a law or whatever, and they say, no, it's just a custom. The college credit expires after 10 years. Well, amongst the people in the audience, I'd love to see a straw poll. How many people know Wyoming residents that have some college credit, but they didn't finish college? And maybe right now would be an opportune time to go back and finish college. And I guarantee you, if they go, the first thing that they'll get is, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, all these college credits have expired. And my question is, why? If you took English 20 years ago, using me, I was in college a long time ago. If I took English back then, or calculus or algebra or whatever, why would that expire? If the college administrator says, well, your computer science, we can't use that, fine. I took Fortran computer programming when I was in college. You know how many times I've used Fortran since I got out? A big fat zero. So again, I say the presumption is the credit does not expire. If they have a good reason, again, computer science or something like that, and they say, oh, sorry, that's expired, fine. But I think that we need to start making it easy. We need to take down barriers. We need to encourage people, if they need to get additional education in order to stay in the state that they love, instead of putting up barriers that are artificial barriers. And as far as I can see, there's no reason for it. We need to start taking those barriers down, and we need to start taking care of our people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative McGuire. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, and thanks for the chamber putting this together in very trying times. To the veterans out there that might look at this later, I've been on listening in on corporations this morning, and Chairman Lindholm and Chairman Landon did a magnificent job of. They took about an hour, and it was very moving. And I appreciate Jerica's opening remarks also. So obviously we're in very troubling times, and it's going to be a very rough legislative session, and we don't know what's going to occur or what's going to face us. And we'll talk later about possibilities within the budget from the questions that I received. But all I ask is our business community across the state and in Natrona County to stick together. And I truly believe we will weather this storm. The vaccine, we may not see it. The general public and most of us on this call today probably won't see it until I'm guessing March or April. They've already developed a list who's going to get it first, from what I've seen on the news, which totally makes sense with first responders and things. But we will turn the corner, and but in the meantime, we've got to stay Wyoming tough, and it's not going to be easy. But But I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll get to the next section.
Representative Gray, thanks for joining us. You want to offer a few opening remarks?
Yes, want to start out, want to thank our veterans. Thank you. And want to thank the chamber for putting this event on. A couple messages I would say in the introduction. One, we need to be dynamic. There's going to be an effort to increase taxes again. Very troubling to me. I oppose those efforts. It's the same golden oldie that we've heard now for 6 or 7 years. And it doesn't work for a number of reasons. It's not consistent with having a pro-growth policy that is going to help our state. And it's also not what our citizenry wants. So I just think it reminds me of the golden oldie, that song that they think you want to hear, but you really don't. And we're going to hear it again. Unfortunately, it's already done tremendous damage to our state, and we need to resist it. The amount of uncertainty that narrative has created in terms of business growth has been really damaging. I want to, and it's going to be the first question, bring forward though, what is the path forward? Because there is a path forward, and I want to be concrete on that because that's important. So I would say, one, be dynamic. Let's not fall for the tax increase narrative, which is wrong-headed for our state. The second thing I would say is we need to protect our industry. And I just give a quick update on the coal export terminal litigation issue, which 2 years ago, we brought a bill, House Bill 251, to change the strategy on the West Coast states, pushing back on the West Coast states that were blocking our coal exports. Because the previous strategy for a decade had been to file an amicus brief, just tack on to the private litigation that the coal export terminal had filed out there. And that had tremendous procedural problems. So we brought House Bill 251, and it ended up being vetoed, but it changed the whole dynamic and saying, look, we have the opportunity to bring state to state litigation, and we need to be looking at that and actively pursuing that, because that receives automatic jurisdiction in the Supreme Court. So finally, even though it was vetoed earlier this year, the governor finally took action on that after a decade of across multiple administrations of waiting. And within 6 months, the Supreme Court has now come back and asked the Solicitor General to file a response. And the Solicitor General under this administration I think is going to be on our side on this. So I think, especially with Justice Barrett, I think we're going to get cert on this, and we're finally going to get this heard after a decade of waiting. I bring that up because that's an example of the type of defense of our industry that we need to have, because there is really an attack on our industry, and it's very troubling. So thank you for inviting me here, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Representative Obermueller.
I think I'm live. Is that good? Okay, thank you very much. I also appreciate the format. Thank you for the invitation. I did not have an opponent during this cycle, which means you don't raise any money for your campaign, which means it's hard to get information out to the voters as to where you stand. And so I appreciate these kinds of formats where we can talk about the reality of our situation and how we need a balanced approach to our future, understanding where we really are financially. My background was as a CPA. I retired from an accounting practice in 2016 and then joined the legislature. So this will be my third go around, but at this point I feel like I have a pretty good handle on how money moves to the state, where we can access funds to support the state, and so my takeaways from that I think will be fleshed out in the questions that you have for us today. So thank you again for having us, and let's proceed.
All right, so the first question we have is, with the current state of the economy and fiscal challenges in Wyoming, can the legislature go this year without looking at new taxes or new fees? And we're going to, let's start with the Representative Sweeney, and we'll go with around the other horn.
Well, thanks for the question. The short answer is I've firmly believed my first 2 terms I have advocated for broadening our tax base, looking at different things that we could do, and have looked back on the tax reform 2020 document when Representative Obermuller brought forth the corporate tax idea. I was totally in favor of it, still am in favor of that method. But my answer is no. I believe we will do the cuts. You know, there are still efficiencies, and I believe that through the cuts the governor has already made, which hasn't been on the education side yet, because constitutionally he cannot affect those changes, but he's asked, and school districts are working on those things. But the legislature, we will look at that, but between the cuts, between the rainy day accounts, and also with minimal taxation. As an example, the simplest and quickest would be a sales tax. And Representative Obermuller had a study done by Don Richards, and it was given to the Education Committee, but we have room and still be extremely competitive. And I would say to you, no, I don't think there is time. I think we have to do all of these things in unison. Otherwise, we're going to spend down our reserve, get to the edge of the cliff, and be pushed off of the edge of the cliff by those that say, no, you can't do that. And I appreciate the question. That's my view.
Let's go to Representative Obermuller for the same question. Can the legislature go this year without looking at new taxes and fees?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I guess what the question is asking, I guess, is can we fund the government in the short term over the next year? I mean, that's part of the implication of that, and the answer to that is yes. The latest estimates from the Legislative Service Office is that the combination of various buckets of money to draw from will deplete over this coming biennium by $1.1 billion. But that leaves 1.5 billion still in reserves after that happens. So in the short term, we are capable of funding our government and the services. In the short term, everything can still be paid for. Unfortunately, these numbers do not take into account deferred expenses, like the lag in the road maintenance program, which is estimated to be north of 135 million a year. The talk about efficiencies to be found are really offset by all kinds of these deferred costs. A second example is technology upgrades that our state agencies need. Some of these systems, like the WIDOT system, is so old there's no one under retirement age that is even capable of maintaining these things. And it's a problem across the agencies with the upgrades they need technologically. So, the future is going to is a different answer to that question, and we can't go on forever like this. the future requires some soul searching about the very purpose of government, as you've heard Representative Gray talk about. That is so wrong-headed to talk about taxes, you know, so we have to have that conversation. The state needs to have it about what the purpose of government is as we begin to dismantle our agencies, which we're in the process of doing. Well, that's just going to happen. My preference is a combination of cuts and revenue, but frankly, I don't see revenue coming. It's not the mood of the state or the kinds of ideas that are getting elected into these positions right now. My fear is that our institutions of government will have to be destroyed so people react to the losses of those institutions. I hope my fears are unfounded, but I see that that's the road we're on in the near term. Thank you.
Representative Gray, same question.
Thank you. Definitely have a different perspective. And so I guess a couple things I would say is I appreciate Representative Obermuller said about short-term cash needs. I mean, you look at the current fiscal biennium we're on, we have a profiled rainy day account, which is cash savings of June 30th, 2022. The goldenrod profile is that there's going to be 1.2 billion there. And you even want to look at the current fiscal biennium, that deficit in terms of transfers from our cash savings to backfill those accounts, I would only put that at about 400 million. It's about 300 million from the school foundation program account. And despite all of the reductions in the general fund, although it's come back over this last Craig profile, it's only about $112 million projected cash draw. And that's why the legislature has not gone, one of the reasons why a legislature has not gone back into special session, although I think there are reasons for us to do that, and I'm supportive of us doing that. But that means I think the worst case scenario is that on July 1st, 2022, we're looking at our cash savings at about $1 billion. And I would say that's worst case. There would be another transfer to that upcoming biennium to the school's account on July 1. Bottom line on that is that we have plenty of time. And so I guess what I would say is for this upcoming biennium, my hope is that the legislators that have gotten really passionate about the tax increase narrative can see, and I appreciate what Representative Obermuller is saying, is that this is not the mood right now, and it is not. And so that we can have a real conversation about how we reduce in the least painful way, in a way that some instances might actually improve the administration of government. And I think there's a real role for the legislature there, because I'm not 100% sure I've seen that yet from the governor's office with this across the board approach. I give a couple examples of areas where I think I haven't seen enough activity enough vigor from the governor in terms of reductions. We on judiciary, corrections came in and said they're doing telehealth. So they're saving on all the transportation costs for those telehealth visits. That's about a $1.5 million savings a biennium. I did the calculation, and you scale that across government. That's what the efficiency study was talking about. And when the governor's office has led with this across the board approach, which is very painful, I really question that. And I think the legislature needs to push back on that and get to the same place, even possibly more in terms of targeted savings, but do it in a way that is the least painful, in some cases actually improving the administration of government. Another example that I would give off that is the centralization of HR in state government. It would be about a 50 to 60 position savings, and the efficiency study talked about this. And A&I, we're not quite there in terms of making this happen yet, and there's been some dragging of feet, but 50, 60 position savings is real. So what I would say is we have plenty of time. I think we need to, and the other thing too is I've talked a lot about putting a cap on the growth in expenditure. And when you have this 10% reduction, if you put a cap on that in the future, if say we return to 2018, 2019 levels, which I think is certainly possible, then you retain that 10% reduction. And so suddenly the general fund, if we went back to 2018, 2019 levels, you could see a $200-300 million surplus, and you can backfill that into schools and some of the other more structural deficits. I know I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McGuire, comments on can the legislature go this year biennium without looking at new taxes and fees?
Thank you for the question. The answer is yes and no. And I would hearken back to the late 70s when I was growing up. Representative Washut was a young adult at that time. But at that point, we had the greatest governor that we've ever had, Stan Hathaway. And Stan Hathaway had the vision that the minerals that were being extracted from the state, we needed to tax them before they left and use that revenue to support the state. And fortunately, when people walked into his office and told him, if you enact this tax, it'll be the end of your political career, he was steadfast and he said, no, we're going to do it. And he enacted those taxes, which have resulted in billions and billions of dollars of revenue to the state of Wyoming over my lifetime. And I have enjoyed the fact that right now, the state of Wyoming has the lowest personal tax burden of any state in the union. We're the cheapest place to be tax-wise in the state, not necessarily for industry, but for individuals, we're the cheapest place in the country. And that's because we have effectively taxed out-of-state companies and we have effectively taxed the minerals that have left the state. And thank goodness for that. So we stand on the shoulders of those people who had the foresight to put in a tax system that has provided fantastic education and benefits and infrastructure for the state of Wyoming. Now, I don't think anybody would argue that we're going to lose that revenue stream. It's not going to be all at once, but we're going to lose a substantial portion of it. And whether you're in business or a nonprofit or your own home budget, if your main source of revenue is going down, you can do two things. You can cut costs or you can look for other revenue. And the intelligent, pragmatic person is going to do both. And if we're going to be intelligent and pragmatic as a legislature, we need to do both. Yeah, there are additional cuts that can be made. Representative Obermueller and myself were on the government efficiency study. And yes, there are additional places that we can make cuts. But I'll tell you, there aren't that many. And an anecdotal story that will touch home is last year when we had the big blizzard and it went 4 days. Well, at the end of 3 days, YDOT ran out of snowplow operators. And fortunately, the fourth day of the storm was a Sunday. But that day was the first day that I-25 had not been plowed pretty much since I-25 had been built across the state of Wyoming. They were just out of snowplow operators. They didn't have anybody else, and the people that were available were timed out. So even if they had wanted to, they couldn't have paid anybody to go out and plow the roads. Fortunately, it was a Sunday and it turned into a non-event. But that's where we are with regard to the state. I mean, there have been draconian cuts made. Governor Meade made a lot of cuts. The legislature has made a lot of cuts. We're going to continue to make cuts. And at a certain point, we're going to meet that magic place where additional cuts are going to severely impact our citizenry. So I will go back to my pragmatic comment. At that point, do we just continue to cut? Or do we look for other sources of revenue? What's the smart thing to do? And I think the people of Wyoming have elected their legislature and their top 5 electeds to look at all aspects, to look at everything that can be done and come up with the best balance. And just saying, well, we're never going to raise a tax. Well, go back to the late 70s when I was growing up, and I can tell you that Wyoming was a poor state at that time. Our public schools were very, very I mean, they were on a razor's edge. And there was a point in time where the budget of the state of Wyoming was saved when a very rich heiress in Jackson passed away. And basically the money that came from that estate settlement was what balanced the budget for the state of Wyoming. And fortunately, due to the foresight of people like Governor Hathaway, we're the beneficiaries of that. And the question is, do we want to continue to have intelligent program? Do we want to have intelligent discussions, or do we want to just fall back, spend everything that's in the savings account, and wait till we hit the edge and close up the state? I don't know. The people need to talk to us, and it needs to be a two-way conversation. Thank you.
Representative Washut, thank you for being able to join us, and comments from you on this topic of raising new revenue.
My background, having spent my life in public service as a public employee, I have a little different take than some of the other legislators. And, I know that there's probably room for more cuts, and I think there will have to be more cuts. I think there's room for some consolidation of different operations within state government. But I think by and large, the state employees are productive people. They do great work. They do important work. And my worry about across the board cuts or continued cuts is at a certain point, the entire enterprise becomes ineffective. And so I think eliminating entire programs or entire areas probably makes more sense than just keep whacking and whacking where everything becomes dysfunctional. As painful as it might be to eliminate entire areas. I don't know that we have 1.7 billion in deficit. I think Representative Grace had, made a good point that really depends upon what level you're trying to get the state government to function at. Are you looking at one of our bust years where we made it by? Is that going to be our base level? Or are we going to look at one of our better years where things were pretty flush? Is that going to be our base level? But if you take the 1.7 billion and you divide it by 578,000 people, we're talking about $2,900 in new taxes for every man, woman, and child in the state. And there's no appetite for that. So we have to look beyond our borders, ways to bring in revenues that won't all come out of the back pocket of the Wyoming taxpayers. It's an absolute truth that Wyoming taxpayers have gotten a great deal for many, many, many years. But looking at the results of the recent election, I really don't sense that there's a great appetite for a lot of new taxes. But the people I've talked to seem open to some new taxes. And so I think that's where the discussion needs to be. I would suggest that the legislature needs to first look at the cuts and see where we can cut, where we can consolidate that will give us as much as we can possibly achieve in that direction without completely, making state government dysfunctional. And then we have to figure out how far do we want to backfill with new taxes and with reserve money. So I think we will dip into reserves. I think that's almost a foregone conclusion. But I think there's going to be a pretty robust discussion about raising some taxes. My concern on things like income taxes, I think last year we talked about corporate income tax, and it was going to be like a $9 million stand-up cost, and months down the road before the state saw a single penny. We don't have $9 million to spare right now, and I don't know that we want to wait months before we start generating revenue from a corporate income tax or a state income tax. So then we're left with things like sales tax and tax on tobacco and tax on alcohol and tax on gasoline. My sense is we need to get the cuts done first, because the conservatives in the body are probably not going to have any appetite at all to talk about tax increases from the get-go. I think we need to talk about where we can go as far as we can go with cuts, and where that leaves state government, what are the natural outcomes of all those cuts, and then decide what tax increases we want to impose in order to get us to a level of state government that we're comfortable with. I wish I had a magic wand, and I wish we could continue getting people in Kansas and elsewhere to pay our taxes for us. But at some point, I think we're probably going to be looking at some tax increases, as painful as that be. I've been an opponent to taxes, most of the taxes that have come before us in my short time in the legislature. But this year may be the year where we really have no alternative. So that was my comment.
All right, thank you, Representative Walshett. And Speaker Harshman, thanks for joining us today, taking a few minutes out of your day. And as you can tell, we're talking about fiscal challenges facing Wyoming and what can the legislature go this year or maybe the biennium without looking at new taxes and fees? So it's all you now.
Okay. Can you hear me all right? Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for having us, and happy Veterans Day to you veterans out there. So, I appreciate the question. I think, there's three types of taxes, basically, right? Income taxes, property taxes, and sales taxes. Wyoming, of course, doesn't have an income tax unless you produce minerals, and we call it a severance tax, but it's basically an income or a gross receipts tax. And property taxes are very low, lowest in the country. Corporate taxes and personal property taxes. Our ag taxes are at the very bottom. And those things, I think folks don't have any appetite really to probably raise them. And I think those things, you raise the property tax, it takes more than a year to see any of that returned. And folks I think those are a hard sell. I think, and then you get the sales tax. And so I think there's 46 states that have sales taxes. Our neighbor Montana does not. There's just a few states that have only sales taxes. Wyoming is one of those. We have, either 44th right there out of 46 states with sales tax, lowest sales tax. I think Alaska's lower than us. But I think our big deal with sales tax is, and you think about what's happened to our economy over the last 50 years. We used to have goods were about 60, 70% of it, services 30 to 40%. And there's been this gradual shift, and I think you'll continue to see that. You see it in Casper. I mean, there's all kinds of services. I literally drove by, this truck had graphics on the truck, clean up your dog crap out of your yard. I mean, literally. And there's a service to do everything. And the thing in Wyoming, we tax no services. And so you go to South Dakota, a sales tax only state, has incredibly high property taxes. They tax about, I believe, 100 services. Texas, 150. Washington State, which has only sales taxes nearly 200 services. So I think there's things, we talk about raising taxes, but I think part of ours, we need to probably, I think we're going to stay a sales tax state. I don't think we're going to have an income tax. Even though there are, our tax system encourages tax refugees, very wealthy, and most of them are coming to Teton County now, the wealthiest county in America, and really to buy up our river bottoms and buy our ranches and to buy property here. That's the way and buy agriculture property. We know that. We know there are people that actually make more money in a year than what our state spends on the entire budget. They have Wyoming driver's license. I still don't think there's any appetite probably in our generation to have an income tax. I think the flat taxers have won that debate. And I think President Reagan started that. I think, Forbes and others who have run that. I think folks think generally that a sales tax is probably the fairest, flattest tax. And we know we don't tax food, so that's a part with the regressive piece of it that probably helps that. But I think we're going to have to look at that. Probably don't have to do it right away, but I think it's like any problem. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. The real issue that nobody has talked about yet is really the decline in coal, and coal's gone. And I've been working on coal exports for 10 years. I worked on the the industrial complexes, all those things to add value, but there's been this unbelievable shift in coal. And so just a few years ago, we mined 470 million tons. We're going to mine probably 170 million this year. And that alone is about 500 million a year to the state. And it's just not something you make up. And our real problem is oil will always go up and down. But we've had this bedrock since the 70s, really, of coal. It hit 200 tons in the 80s, then it hit 300 tons in the 90s, and then 400 million tons. It just had this gradual growth kind of, and it's gone. And so I think we're going to all struggle with how we replace that. I agree. I think governor's already cut 400 million. It's coming. I think the deficit is probably, if you're talking year terms on the school side, it's probably 300 million a year now. The general fund side, maybe a little bit more. But the governor has made some significant cuts, and I'll say he's probably made the easy cuts already. And the next ones get really tough, and it involves primarily health care for very young people, for children, and for old people, and for poor people. The next cuts affect the disabled, and it's very expensive. Those things are super expensive. It's half of our general fund. And those things are going to get tough. It's not the few rest stops, that's less than 0.5% of our problem. So it's going to be tough. And I think folks are going to just have to work at it. So I don't have the answer. But at some point, we're going to have to, in Wyoming, we got a lot of advantages. And obviously this tax on minerals has allowed us to all kind of, live off the dole of somebody else. But we also suffer, as we have expensive health care here. We have a diseconomy of scale. We don't have a school district with 100,000 kids. We have a state with 100,000 kids. And so all these things kind of are tough because we value small town Wyoming. We know, we could close Glenrock down and ship their kids to Casper right now. I don't think anybody on this screen is going to advocate for that. So I think like many of the guys before me have said, I think we're going to have to go through this a little bit and keep working on it. But I think all problems, this is solvable. It's solvable with a little sales tax, a penny. We raise a penny in sales tax. We move from 44th out of 46 to about 30th. You could not even raise the sales tax, just tax services. Be like South Dakota. You'd raise the same as a penny. Would solve about 3/4 of our problems. I still think we could still work more. We're going to lower our investment return on our permanent mineral trust fund. I think it's a silly idea. It's going to cost us money that we could use that money. And so we'll just keep working on it, having these debates. We probably got a little bit of time, but I think this thing with coal is real troublesome. And that is the foundation of our problem. So thank you.
All right, Representative Harshman, thank you. Now, we got one more question. I want to remind the audience that you can submit some questions in the chat. I've had a few submitted to me privately that we may ask if there's time at the end. And theoretically, with this next question, if everybody takes 2 minutes, there will be time at the end for a couple more questions. But I guess I'm going to ask, what is the one thing the legislature could do to help small businesses be successful during these very challenging times, whether it's the economic decline or the COVID situation, whatever it might be, and maybe lump in there, does that include keeping the business council funded? So I'm going to go around the horn. Why don't we go to Representative Obermueller first? And you're on mute, Representative Obermueller.
Got it. All right.
There you go.
Just a word about the corporate tax situation. Make no mistake about it, we already pay corporate income tax in the state of Wyoming. The global economy operates that way. They spread all of their costs, including taxes, to one of their customers, including in Wyoming. 48 states tax the global economy because they understand this, that the only thing you can do is get your money back. You can't stop their taxes from flowing to you. It's called uniform pricing. And whether you live in New York or Wyoming, you pay the same price because they dump all of their taxes into the big bucket and spread it to you. So those people that are talking about no new corporate taxes can't stop a new corporate tax from coming at us from California or New York, wherever they want to raise their taxes. That amount, as you all know, gets dumped into the price, and we pay our share. So we can stand back and let them have their way in Wyoming and not get our money back, or we can do the right thing and have a corporate tax structure that hits the largest corporations, those involved in the global economy, and get our money back to support all the state functions that they rely on. We build our streets, we provide the safety net for all their employees. Across the board, they rely on a robust government system to support them. Those kind of costs are not in their low cost guarantees. They expect us to fund those, and they understand themselves that they have a role in this. We just choose not to ask them to do that. So we have to change our attitude about how we operate in the global economy. That economy kills our small business. And I mean, if there's a little benefit to be derived from the fact that they get taxed and our small business doesn't, that's also a good thing. So in terms of what the legislature can do to help small business, that's a big one. There's also a few other things that help small business. We have a few of those things in place. One of the things that we do as a government is we fund water projects. Over the out of the severance taxes over the last 20 years, we have built or put in roughly $1 billion into water projects around the state, built on over 1,000 projects in the state of Wyoming. This is a government-private type partnership arrangement. There isn't a private solution to everything. Agriculture, the small towns, every town, every county, every citizen has benefited from this government-private partnership surrounding water. And there are many things like that that can be looked at where we don't destroy our economy in the process of destroying our government. We find ways that we can build off of these partnerships that we have and keep our small businesses going. So that's what my promise is in my time, remaining time in the legislature, is look for more ways where we have those cooperative efforts that we can invest in the state and invest in our small businesses. Thank you very much.
Representative McGuire, you want to address this as well?
I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was, but I enjoyed that last presentation.
No, the question is, what's the one thing the legislature can do to help small businesses being successful during these challenging times, whether that's the economy or COVID related or whatever it might be? And then maybe throw in there if you think the business council has a role still.
Well, our small businesses are definitely challenged at this point. And as Representative Obermueller alluded to, there's this globalization of the country and globalization, obviously, of the world. And that directly affects and is very detrimental to our small businesses. Again, I don't want to stress when I was growing up, but when I was growing up, we had clothing stores in downtown Casper. We had, we had businesses that were here. And when companies would go out, for example, all of the oil field service companies were locally owned. When those individuals would go out and they would earn money, they would come back and they would buy their vehicles locally. They would buy their shirts locally. They would buy everything locally. And those dollars would circulate around. And that's what helped us have a strong economy that continued to grow as the state was, growing with them. Right now, unfortunately, when we go out and we buy something online, or if we buy it from a big box store or whatever, at the end of the day, when they push the button, those dollars leave the state and they don't come back. I will go back to my example of Casper College. Go show me one big multinational company that has invested in our community and brought dollars back like our local people do. It just doesn't happen. We need to have our local business people. We individually need to support them, and as legislators, we need to do everything that we can to keep our keep our dollars local. And it's just going to be a multifaceted approach. There's no magic about that. And the Business Council, in my opinion, is doing a great job. They are aggressive, they're working hard, and I think we need to continue to give them our support. And that's where I am with regard to that. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Washut.
Thank you. I wish I had the silver bullet. There's a lot of things that come to mind for me. One thing I wondered, and I don't have the answer for this, is how often is it the state of Wyoming pressing that button that Representative McGuire talked about and spending money by ordering products online that we could perhaps be buying from a local vendor someplace in the state? And my guess is that probably occurs quite frequently simply because it's so convenient, and that state agencies, the university, community colleges, school districts, probably all buy a lot of materials through online vendors from out-of-state vendors. And perhaps, we could call attention to that. I don't know whether we don't want to legislate it or not, but the solution might not be with the legislature. The individual citizens of Wyoming, by buying more products from your local suppliers rather than through your online vendors, can have a lot of influence. And but we're up against the competition of convenience and also the competition of availability of a wide range of products that maybe the downtown store doesn't have. So I think that we can work in that respect. I also think when we look at Wyoming products, like the First Lady's done some work with Wyoming ag products, and finding markets within the state of Wyoming for more of our own ag products, the farm to fork kind of approach. And I think about how many pounds of hamburger get consumed at our state institutions, whether we're talking the University of Wyoming cafeteria or the community college cafeterias or the state prison or the Wyoming Law Enforcement Academy cafeteria. If we could consume more Wyoming products in all of those institutions, that might have a positive benefit for small town Wyoming and Wyoming providers and businessmen. So a lot of different things, a lot of different avenues. The last thing I'd bring up is in the Judiciary Committee this year, we heard some testimony about bidding, and sometimes Wyoming contractors and Wyoming businesses are shut out by bid specifications and so forth that are set oftentimes by out-of-state engineers and architects. And it limits the number of these projects that state Wyoming-based contractors might be eligible. We heard about this crazy case where there's a courthouse, and the contractor who built the courthouse was deemed ineligible to do the remodel of the courthouse because he hadn't had enough experience with courthouse remodels. Certainly the contractor, the Wyoming-based contractor that built the courthouse ought to have been able to bid on the project to remodel the courthouse. And so those kinds of things, I think the state legislature needs to take a look at, making sure that we have a level playing field for our Wyoming businesses when they're seeking state contracts and state projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Sweeney?
Thank you. So government needs to keep the lights on. And I think that's the number one goal that businesses should be concerned about, because what do I mean by that? In this first round of cuts, the Department of Health, we saw it totals to almost 130 million when you factor in the Medicaid match, but 89 million. And why, to our local businesses, why is that number important? Well, some of those cuts, and the majority, and Speaker Harshman would know the numbers better than I, but almost, it seems to me almost 90% of the Department of Health's budget actually comes back to local contractors, such as Epsilon here in Casper that does in-home health care. And so that's what I mean by that. Those state employees are some of our neighbors. The school teacher that lives next door to you is part of our communities and the soul of our communities. And to me, keeping the lights on and not just absolutely cutting the hell out of our departments, out of our valued state employees, when we could look at reasonable cuts, get there, add 1% sales tax, use our savings, and get there. So, and to the point, the second question that we've kind of glided over that I'll put into this answer is, yes, there is a need for the business council. No, it is not corporate welfare. If not the business council, who are you looking at to do economic development and economic diversification within the state? The private sector? Yes, they have a role. Absolutely. But this notion that the business council doesn't do anything for our communities is incorrect. And so yes, I will support. They've already taken cuts, and I'm sure there'll be more cuts. But so yes, they're valuable, and yes, and thank you to Black Hills Energy for helping us keep the lights on, and for sponsoring this. And that's what I think the legislature needs to focus on, is keeping the lights on and keeping our neighbors employed, and diversifying the economy is a great thing, but we need help to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gray, a couple minutes, and then we'll go to Speaker Harshman.
Okay, I think the number one way we help small business be inviting for investment. And one of the things I want to talk about a little bit here is needing to focus on marketing and continuing our low tax rates in a way that's inviting to business expansion and delivering state government in the most efficient, but also the most effective way possible, kind of responding to the previous point. You know, I want to, on Wyoming Business Council, I want to start with an anecdote on the tax rates. We had a meeting, and I asked on this meeting, what does Wyoming Business Council do to market and try to bring in and grow business statewide based on our low tax rates? And they said nothing, because there's almost this culture of being ashamed of our low tax rates because of how this constant barrage of this golden oldie attempts to increase our tax rates. And so I have a bill actually I've been working on to get Wyoming Business Council a procedure in place where they can focus on marketing based on our low tax rates, focusing on that more, because we've really missed an opportunity with our low tax rates and bringing in investment because there hasn't been that focus, and there's been that sort of that culture of being ashamed of it. And so we need to reverse that. The other thing I would say is the idea that we need to inculcate the idea to create certainty. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and if we can create certainty here in Wyoming, we're going to see more investment. And one of the ways you do that is by showing that we're committed to delivering the most effective, but also the most efficient state government possible. And I really reject the idea that you know, if you go in and say, well, we're already there, there's no possibility for efficiency, then you're not creating that idea out there. And I'll give one example from the budget in March. This was right before coronavirus. We had an amendment for a 0.1% reduction in the general fund, and it failed. 0.1%. That budget, which was never really fully implemented, had enormous problems in the process from the start. The agencies came in with you look at the entire general fund, and all the exception requests, which are supplements to agencies, were 24% of the entire general fund. And that was the mindset going into this. Now, yes, after coronavirus, there were some reductions, but we need to change that entire mindset, that the reductions, you know, the idea that there's nowhere to go on that. And we need to show industry that we are committed to delivering the most efficient, effective state government possible, and that we're going to market our low tax rates and be proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Harshman, Speaker Harshman, I'm sorry.
And your question was really about small business, encourage and help, right? So yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously everybody on this call, small business is really the foundation, you know, provides most of the jobs and most of the opportunity. And so I think the things obviously we can do is, you know, I think many of the members said it. I think the whole property tax thing is going to be a non-issue, I think. And certainly some certainty there, but you can't have, I think by us simply taxing online purchases has helped level the playing field somewhat. I mean, there are folks who oppose that. There's no doubt. I think some of these corporate things, I think Representative Oldmiller is exactly right. And to help level the playing field of some of that, some of these, you know, how you do it and find that niche is really remarkable with some of the things that are stacked against the local guy. But, you know, so then on to the Wyoming Business Council, I think, you know, that's an invention really of the legislature back 2001 and 2. We've been in this deal to try to recruit, try to encourage, try to sell Wyoming. Part of the problem is in Wyoming, we love Wyoming the way it is. I don't think anybody wants to see Cheyenne to Casper become the new Front Range and have, you know, we look at Colorado, we all remember 25 years ago, wasn't all there, the Front Range. Now it's expanded to Cheyenne, and I think none of us want to really see that. But at the same time, we want to see some of this growth too. So we kind of have this conundrum within ourselves a little bit. We want growth, but yeah, we want our open spaces too. And we like driving on, you know, on highways that aren't crowded and all those kind of things. So, yeah, I think the business council, it's been an issue. I think we've got a new director. I think it's had its share of criticism. I think as much as anything, I think our local efforts, and I've said this for a long time, we can somehow pull it all together and pull all of our kind of expertise together to do that. There's been some real success stories with the business council, no doubt about it. But I tell you, their work the last 6-7 months obviously has been CARES funding, and they've worked hard, and I think by most accounts have done a pretty decent job. But yeah, it's part of that, and I don't know. We've again, I think we're in that thing deciding exactly what we really want, and Wyoming, we've been successful recruiting, gun manufacturers and those folks, and when you talk to them after they've been here, they didn't realize healthcare was as expensive as it is. Didn't realize transportation costs. Those things are. So we've got some things we've got to continue to work on, but Wyoming, I still believe, is the best place anywhere to raise a family, live the American dream. Probably start a small business, and really try to make your dreams come true. So we want to obviously keep it that way. And I think part of the deal as legislators, we represent you. And I think it's important for you to continue to be involved and communicate with us. And because you look at this panel, none of us are experts in small business, Representative McGuire, Representative Sweeney have run businesses. Representative Oldmiller's run his own accounting shop. Different people have done different things. I've been involved in the trucking business, but some of you folks have really lived it and know best. And so I think that's part of it too, to, share that with us as we represent you. Contrary to what some of our colleagues think, that we have to vote the party line all the time, we really represent people. And we want to do the best for you here in Casper and create that environment. So thank you.
Thank you. We only have about 15 minutes left. I got a good question from the audience. I don't know that we have time to answer it. So I'm going to ask the question and ask you also to kind of wrap up your comments as well, kind of all in one. If you want to talk about this question, that's great. Or if you just want to give closing remarks, that's fine too. But if you could try to keep it to 2 minutes, we'd appreciate it. The question I got from the audience, it's a good question, is, we've been talking about diversification for about, forever, 20 plus years or so. I remember being an advisor to Governor Geringer on the Energy Commission, and a lot of the things that we talked about then are still being talked about. Tax Reform 2000, same thing. Diversification of the economy seems to be going on and on. Do we have a vision for where we want the state to be, say in 2030 or 2050, and clear path initiatives to get there? And then just kind of closing remarks along the way as well, if you want to address those. So we'll start with Representative Obermuller. Again, if we can keep it to 2 minutes or less, that'd be great. Did you find your mute button, Representative? There you go.
I think I'm back. In terms of a vision for the state of Wyoming, I think at this point, let me talk about it just in the near frame, without injecting what we might bring in. What we need to be very careful about are our existing industries, our existing small businesses. We have one example out there is the construction industry. We have contractors that sit in every small town in this state. They are the people that provide middle-class jobs out in the areas of town nobody drives in, but they're in the background. You don't hear a lot about that. But these are solid, Wyoming-based, have all the characteristics of what we want Wyoming people to be. And what do we do? we're going to cut the size of government, right? We're going to chop away on the projects that these guys depend on. And so across the board, you have to look at where we are right now, and we have to support and protect what is the base right now. And then looking out to others coming here, in my mind, in the short term, is kind of a secondary issue. My focus is going to be on what our strong play to our strengths that we have right now. Thank you.
Representative Gray?
Well, thank you. I think, to echo some of the comments earlier, we need to be passionate about protecting our existing industries, growing them, and then continue to grow and expand around that and deliver efficient, effective state government. I'll give one example. I was going to talk about this earlier. The property tax valuation increase, the uncertainty that has created in Natrona County is a huge issue for us. I mean, 900%, 1,500%, 300%, 500% increase. I got so many emails. And so I have a bill to put a cap on that year-to-year growth in property tax assessments, because it's really damaging to the potential for us to grow here in Natrona County and across the state of Wyoming when counties have that issue, which they have. I also agree and have worked on with Representative Washit that pre-qualification standards have often prevented in-state contractors from bidding on projects. That's very troubling. We have a bill to get some controls on that, so in-state contractors are going to be able to bid on some of those projects where they've been rejected. And I think that if we deliver efficient, effective state government, I mean, that's really needs to be a huge goal of what we're doing, and focus on continuing our low tax rates and being positive. I mean, you think about the coal export terminal litigation bill that we did, and I really appreciate Speaker Harshman's help on that. The way that we changed the ball game from saying we're just going to tack on to the private litigation, which was a failed strategy that had been going for a decade, and say, no, we're going to begin state-to-state litigation to protect our coal exports. And I think we're on the verge of getting cert in the Supreme Court. Obviously, we're going to have that communication with the Solicitor General, giving comments there over the next 2 months. And just one coal export terminal, I mean, we're talking about thousands of jobs for our state, hundreds of millions of dollars for the state in terms of revenues, and then growth in our economy, all the ancillary industries around that. And I think it'll just be a floodgate. If they allow that, then I think you're going to see 2 or 3 more, which was the original plan on those coal export terminals 15, 20 years ago. And it has implications too for the Jordan Cove LNG terminal, this case as well. So, I mean, I think we need to continue to protect our existing industries and grow. And I appreciate this opportunity. You can call me anytime, 24/7, 251-1372, 251-1372. You can call or text anytime. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative McGuire, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think I share the same vision that 99.9% of the people have, and that is for controlled, intelligent growth for the state of Wyoming, so that we have a place where our kids can stay. You know, when I graduated from college, it was in the middle of the crash in the 80s. And the majority of my friends moved out of state, never to come back. Right now, my kids are getting ready to graduate from college. And what kind of opportunities do we have for them to stay here in the state of Wyoming and to carry on in the tradition, live a great life, and have an opportunity to build wealth for themselves? Well, those opportunities are very limited. And so if we're going to change that, we need to, again, keep the dollars in state, and we need to support our local businesses, and we need to support our local economy. I'll just add, you mentioned other bills that were of interest to us. I've got a bill that has been introduced as a committee bill through the Military Transportation Committee, and that is to recognize our veterans that lost their lives in the state of Wyoming during military training accidents and other incidents. And really the driving force of that is in 1942, when the Casper Army Air Base was established in Casper, they started training kids. And they were just that, they were kids. They were 17-year-old kids that were getting into, at that time, the most advanced equipment that we had bombers, and they were training hard. And in Casper alone, we lost 139 people. And so what this bill is to have a partnership between the state and local groups, whether it be the State Veterans Museum or whatever, to raise some memorials around the state so that people, as they're traveling, will see the different places where these accidents occurred. And a good example is Shirley Basin, right next to the Shirley Basin rest area. A B-24 went down on January 1st, 1944. All lives were lost as they were returning from a long training mission at 10 o'clock at night on a winter night, pitch dark. They had no idea where they were, and they flew right into the ground. And I think that it's important, we can talk about cuts and oh, woe is us, but we also have to continue to remember the past, build on the past, and we need to let people know that the future is good. We have a great state. We're so fortunate to be where we are, and we need to continue to build that state. Let's not turn the lights out. Let's make it a better state and a better place so that our kids have a great place to be. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Washut, couple minutes, 2 minutes.
I'll be brief. My thought is that all businesses are not created equal. There are some businesses that just have a culture and a value system that makes sense for Wyoming, and they're likely to bring employees into the state who will be delighted to have in the state and who will reflect the Wyoming way. There are other companies and corporations out there that, while they may bring some jobs, they may not be the type of corporate citizens that we'd be really excited about having in our state. And so I think we have to be conscious about who we're soliciting, looking for those industries. I think that some of the success that we've had in the recent past with attracting companies like Magpul, Weatherby, Stag Arms, those are companies that, certainly have a workforce that matches up pretty well with the Wyoming way and the Wyoming culture. And I think we need to continue along those lines.
Thank you. Representative Sweeney?
Thank you. You're right. We've been talking about diversifying the economy and broadening for many, many, many years. And what have we done? We've kind of centered on growing existing businesses and on the mineral industry and the extractive industry. I don't think that's a bad thing, but where do we go from here? I think we can look at, we're about to face a lot of open office space. Can we attract some of the blockchain technology companies, some of the futuristic companies into that vacant space rather than them looking at Cheyenne and Laramie? Are there future technologies, whether it's aerospace that Sheridan has had luck with? Are there other things? So, Speaker Hirschman has said it many a times. The sun is going to come up tomorrow in Wyoming. We do have a bright future. I know it's difficult times. I am so thankful that I was able to sell a few years ago. If I was still in the restaurant and hotel business, I don't know what I'd do. I believe I'd be closed, and the bank would have the keys. But I do believe the CARES Act funding and the way with the leadership of Speaker Harshman and President Perkins put the CARES Act monies to use back to small businesses was brilliant. And a lot of states didn't do that the way Wyoming did. So hang in there. keep believing. And I appreciate Representative Gray bringing up the property tax issue. I'm very supportive of trying to do something with a cap that would help the entire state. And in particular, Natrona County, what we're going through currently. So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Gray. And Speaker Harshman, you could take a minute or two and wrap this up from the legislature.
Timer on, so I'll be brief. Thank you. Appreciate you having us today. And I think your first question, is there a vision, for 50 years out? I would say much of our legislative time is talking about the same issues we did at statehood: education, criminal justice, transportation, the role of government, and in our local communities, all those things. And it'll probably still be that way 100 years from now, but what will it look like? It's hard to say. Governor Meade started the Endow program. Governor Gordon, that program is over. And a lot of work was put into that, a lot of visionary things, but I think we can bank on the fact that we're going to have a strong workforce. We know it. We know that the jobs that are going to be out there 20 years from now, haven't even been invented yet. And there's still going to be a lot of the same stuff going on, right? We're going to have cops and teachers and firemen and doctors and all those, but there's going to be a lot of change. And I think being able to retrain people, this workforce development is going to be huge. We've been working on this bill now. We're going to try to segregate part of the Hathaway and to retrain Wyoming people that are 24 years old and older. You'll see that in the Wyoming's Tomorrow scholarship, because we're gonna have to train for stuff that we've never done before. I think technology, I think the energy markets that we've banked on for over 50, 60, 70 years are fundamentally changing. And much of it's out of our control. And 2/3 of our minerals are owned by the federal government. Half of our oil today is pumped from federal leases. We better embrace all the above. I know I'm a guy that's hated windmills. I saw that initially as an attack on coal and our carbon, but I think we got to move to all the above. And we're just going to have to, if we're going to continue to export about 90% of the energy produced in this state. And I think that's a good thing. So that's 2 minutes, 15 seconds. Thank you so much. All our numbers are on the legislative website. Mine is 262-8075. Everybody's accessible, so please get a hold of us. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I want to thank the audience for attending. I want to thank those who view this recording later for taking the time to watch it. And special thanks to our local legislators for taking time out of their day to participate in it. We greatly appreciate it at the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much. And now I want to turn this back over to Jerica to wrap this up with a few messages from the Chamber.
All right, thank you. And so again, thank you everybody for participating. To our legislators, you guys are so important to us and to the work that's coming up. I know that January is not expected to be very easy for any of you, so good luck. And if you need anything out of the chamber, you know where to get us. I want to circle back to something Representative McGuire said early on, and it was about supporting the local businesses. I just want to remind everybody that the chamber does have a Shop Local campaign that is operating and going. It is free for you guys to participate in. All you have to do is get us your discount programs. And then different this year from what we've done in years past is for those of your businesses that cannot necessarily give the discounts, we're collecting gift cards from your favorite restaurants or retailers to give back so that money does stay local more now than ever. It is important to keep these dollars right here in Natrona County and in the state in general. So if you want more information on that, you can always contact Kim and I here at the chamber. And again, thank you for your time today. We appreciate all of you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.